Welcome, everybody, to the Sentinel Report. I'm your host, Alex Newman. Thank you so much for tuning in on this beautiful March 30th of 2026. It's wonderful to have you with us. We've got an action-packed episode for you. We have Congressman Andy Ogles joining us to discuss his bill overturning the immigration regime that has flooded America with the third world, going all the way back to 1965. It's a major, major development. We also have Representative Ben Davis joining us from Minnesota. He's got articles of impeachment filed against Governor Tim Walz and the radical Muslim socialist Attorney General Keith Ellison. And last but not least, we have the great Jan Jekielek, senior editor at the Epoch Times, to break down the horrific abuse of prisoners of conscience. Literally, they're chopping their organs out by the CCP, the Chinese Communist Party. Brutal, murderous regime. All that and the news and so much more coming up here on the Sentinel Report. But first, a word from the Word. This comes out of John chapter 11, verses 25 and 26. The Word of God says, Jesus said to her, I am the resurrection and the life. Whoever believes in me, though he die, yet shall he live. And everyone who lives and believes in me shall never die. Do you believe this? Amen, folks. I hope you do. Eternity literally depends on it. So go read your Bibles, say some prayers, and make sure you are right with God. Yeah, the world's crazy, but the most important thing you could be doing is making sure your relationship with the Almighty, the creator of the heavens and the earth, is where it needs to be. Before we get into our news segment, folks, I want to tell you about the Under God 1776 Celebration Summit. If you don't teach your children what freedom means, the world will, and trust me, the world doesn't like freedom. So when media and peers and pop culture shape your children's understanding and definition of freedom, they will not live free indeed. So I want you to get equipped to teach your children what true freedom is and how to stand for it by recovering the biblical vision of life and liberty that America was literally founded upon. This is a free 3-day online event, folks. It's called Under God, a 1776 Celebration Summit. Starts April 13th. It goes all the way through April 16th of this year. 17 video sessions with historical experts and modern culture shapers, including yours truly. So you don't want to miss that, about how following God's precepts and commands leads to the blessings that we have seen here in America. It's completely Christ-centered, grounded in his infallible word. There's going to be some great speakers. Eric Metaxas will be there, John Lovell, Paul Jaley, Kevin Swanson, and many, many other great Americans. And you can get it all, folks, at libertysentinel.org/250 summit. That's libertysentinel.org/250 summit. Sign up today, and you can do it through Liberty Sentinel and support our ministry here. Also, folks, check out Heritage Defense. If you haven't yet signed up as a member and you're a Christian who homeschools your children, you've got to know more. It's at heritagedefense.org. They will stand by your side if and when the government ever comes for your precious little ones. Now, I want to get into the news, folks, because we are short on time today. We got so many great guests. Want to get through some of this news. We've also got the great Andrew Mueller, Chief of Operations, joining us here. But, folks, you won't even believe this. It'll sound like fake news, but it's not. The Vatican Bank has literally hired the Epstein Rothschild banker to be the chief. His name is Francois Pauly, and he has now been elected to serve as the president of the supervisory board for the Institute for the Works of Religion. That is the Vatican Bank. They manage the church's money, the church's property, the church's charitable works. The guy's been on the Vatican board since 2024, but he's now going to lead this 7-member panel. And folks, just to give you some context about who this guy is, he was the general manager of the Rothschild Group. Yes, the Rothschild Group. That is who was paying Jeffrey Epstein tens of millions of dollars to do all the weird stuff that he was doing, folks. Unbelievable, but it's true. Sounds crazy, but there it is. Now, we do have a law enforcement crackdown on the elites wrapped up in the Jeffrey Epstein scandal everywhere except the United States of America. This week in France, the Paris arm of the Rothschild Group was raided by the government as part of an Epstein-linked probe. Ariane de Rothschild actually employed Jeffrey Epstein, was there during the search, according to a source cited by Reuters. The French Central Office for Combating Corruption and Tax and Financial Offenses was involved in the raid. And folks, this is huge news. Why isn't this happening in New York and Washington, D.C.? It is enough to make you go crazy. Andrew, you just did a big article. I just did some big articles in a special report in the New American Magazine about Jeffrey Epstein. You focus in on Les Wexner. What's the deal with Epstein? How come the Europeans can go after Epstein Associates, but we here in America are still talking about the stock market?
Yeah, well, it's crazy. Unfortunately, it does appear that President Donald Trump's at least protecting some of these people. At the very least, his Secretary of Commerce, Howard Lutnick, who he said was innocent, even though he lied repeatedly about the Epstein files. So the Europeans are kicking our butts on this. Of course, they arrested Lord Peter Mandelson, who was the U.S. ambassador from England. He was an English ambassador to the United States. Of course, Prince Andrew. And now you have this Rothschild bank raid, which was actually going after a character named Fabrice Aiden, who worked for the United Nations, who was illegally forwarding UN information to Jeffrey Epstein. He was employed by the Rothschilds. So we see the Europeans doing a lot better than the United States. Of course, there hasn't been tons of accountability with a lot of these probes and arrests, but at least they're doing it, opposed to the United States, which is doing nothing by comparison. And I keep telling people the lowest hanging fruit, Leslie Groff, she was Jeffrey Epstein's assistant. And you know this, Alex. She was in the files repeatedly, communicating on behalf of Epstein. She's alive and well today, and yet she has not been deposed. Why is that?
Yeah. Inquiring minds would like to know, folks. It's unacceptable. These are horrible crimes against children, against nature, and I will not stop talking about it until I see arrests. It's not a Democrat hoax, folks, regardless of what you may have heard. Now, Trump just announced that he's appointing Mark Zuckerberg, the little fascist that runs Facebook. That's the guy who shut me down, who shut Donald Trump down. Literally, I am currently banned from Facebook. They shut down my account. And if you spoke about the COVID fraud, if you spoke about the election fraud, you got shut down by this little guy. Now he's on the Science and Technology Advisory Board that Donald Trump is putting together. What could possibly go wrong, folks? Have we been played? It sure is starting to look like that. Meanwhile, Melania Trump, the wife of Donald Trump, is doing some really weird stuff with AI in education. I want you to see Figure 03. It's an AI-powered robot walking with Melania on a summit about empowering children with AI. Check it out. Pretty creepy. Now, I actually know some of the people working on this, so I maybe I should hold my tongue, but I'll tell you what, I'm creeped out. Listen to what Melania says about humanoid robots in education.
Indeed, our world is transforming, and through the use of AI, we can now access centuries worth of humanity's knowledge base. The future of AI is personified. It will be formed in the shape of humans. Very soon, artificial intelligence will move from our mobile phones to humanoids that deliver utility.
Creepy. Did you see the French guy sitting next to Melania? Oh boy, nice choice of character to bring out during this. I'll tell you what, I've been exposing AI in education for many years. In fact, I did an article about the UN Summit on AI in Education back in 2019. They held it in Beijing, of course, and all the governments agreed they were going to use AI in the schools to transform the attitudes and values and mindsets of your children. Frankly, I think the Trump administration needs to get off this. I liked it better when they were talking about shutting down federal involvement in education. This stuff is just creepy. Okay. Speaking of AI, the CEO of Anthropic warns that 50% of all entry-level lawyers, consultants, and finance professionals are going to be gone within the next 1 to 5 years. Check it out. Well, if you could only hear that, yeah, folks, coming soon, no more jobs for all these entry-level folks. Grad students, junior hires, hate to say it, guys, but you're cooked. You better come up with a plan B and C. Now, turning over to Citadel CEO Ken Griffin, manages an enormous amount of money. The world needs a savior, and hopefully it's going to be AI. Listen to this.
Will AI create the productivity acceleration that is honestly this hoped for in Washington and in the halls of government around the world as a way to overcome the profligate spending that we're currently engaged in? Like the world needs a savior. And the hope is that AI is the savior that we need for productivity. And the challenge with this is it may or may not be. We just don't know yet.
Fascinating, Andrew. So AI is going to educate our children. It's going to start killing people autonomously. It's going to save the world. It's going to give us new mRNA cancer vaccines. I'm starting to get some really weird vibes from all this. How about you?
Me too. And Melania even said these robot humanoids will be able to understand the emotional state of children and help them be a full and complete person. It's very odd. Of course, we read in 1 John chapter 3 that only God is all knowing. And I see these AI humanoids taking over all elements of our life as kind of a rebellion in a Tower of Babel style format against God. I want to be pro-human. I want to be anti-AI. I think that just because AI can do something doesn't mean it should. And especially as conservatives and people in the Republican Party, we really need to start asking, should Larry Ellison, Mark Andreessen, Peter Thiel, these guys who are pushing this AI God complex, should they really be decision makers in the White House?
Yeah, I certainly don't think so. I mean, we know a lot about their background, and frankly, you know, I'm not anti-technology, but I'm very anti putting your hope in technology, and I'm very, very anti putting crazy technology developed by people who hate God and hate truth in charge of our lives. It's an outrage. And so, you know, Proverbs, Psalms tells us don't put your trust in men, don't put your trust in princes, without sounding like I'm adding to God's word. I'm going to say also, don't put your trust in AI either. Put your trust in the Lord and only in the Lord. And by the way, don't put your trust in the government, because your government is beyond broke. And they admit it now, right? We just got the latest U.S. government Treasury report, consolidated statements for fiscal year 2025, shows that as Americans were distracted with the war, folks, look at this. I can't even believe I'm saying this. $47 trillion in total liabilities. Okay, that's the U.S. government. They don't even talk about the unfunded liabilities, all these promises they've made, and they have $6 trillion in total assets. In other words, the U.S. government is so far beyond bankrupt, you can't even begin to imagine. And this is in the official financial report of the U.S. government, folks. The word unsustainable is in there 18 times. The word crisis is in there 14 times. I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but you need to know this and you need to plan accordingly. Now, J.D. Vance says Trump is bringing in the New World Order. Listen.
Well, it's definitely, I think, a new world order. I think the president has sought to it. There's a new world order in trade. There's a new world order in globalization and the way that we invest in our economy versus, foreign supply chains. There's a new world order, and that the president is willing to shake up some old alliance structures. I mean, NATO, I think, is much different because of the president's leadership than it was 10 years ago. It was sort of coasting. It was effectively a protectorate of the United States of America. Obviously, you saw what happened in Venezuela. So, yeah, the president is putting a stamp on world history.
Is this the good kind of New World Order? I don't know. Wish I had had the opportunity to ask. Is this the same New World Order that Henry Kissinger and Klaus Schwab and George Bush and Clinton and all those guys were talking about? Or is this a new World Order? Now, J.D. Vance also said that Ilhan Omar committed immigration fraud. Check it out.
Ilhan Omar definitely committed immigration fraud against the United States of America. She has been at the center of a lot of the worst fraudsters in the Somali community.
So why is she still here? Right? So anyways, he says he talked to Stephen Miller, Trump's domestic policy guy, about what to do here. They're looking at possible enforcement options. And it was interesting because the Republic of Somaliland actually posted the receipts on X. They've got some very interesting documents about Ilhan Omar and her family. Turns out she comes from a family of war criminals, and the Obama Department of Justice refused to investigate, but she married her brother, Ahmed Nur Saeed Elmi. And turns out their father used a bunch of different names. But folks, this is incredible. We've got like massive immigration fraud on our hands. And instead of doing something, we've got her serving in Congress, aiding and abetting this crime spree. So absolutely ridiculous. Going back to J.D. Vance's very interesting interview with Benny Johnson, he actually talks about UFOs. I want you to listen to this.
You're going to release all the UFO files?
We're working on it. It's funny. When I came in, I was obsessed with the UFO files. And then you start getting really busy worrying about the economy and national security and things like that. But I've still got 3 more years as vice president. I will get to the bottom of the UFO files.
Okay. Have you peeked? Have you done a peek?
Have I what?
Have you done a peek? Have you
So I actually haven't. I have
full
not.
Independence Day.
I have not been able to spend enough time on this to really understand it. Yeah. But I am going to. Trust me. I'm obsessed with this. I've already had a couple of times where I'm like, all right, we're going to Area 51. We're going out to New Mexico. We're going to sort of get to the bottom of this. And then the timing of the trip just didn't work out. But trust me, anybody who's curious about this, I'm more curious than anybody. And I've got 3 years of the very, very tippy top of the classification. I'm going to get to the bottom of it.
Okay. So you haven't been to Area 51 yet?
Not yet.
Some people say they keep the UFOs in Ohio.
Hangar 18, Hangar 18, right?
I've
heard that as well. But I don't know. I haven't looked into it yet.
Okay. All right. Well, we're waiting for it. We saw aliens.gov.
You know me.
We saw aliens.gov.
I don't think they're aliens. I think they're demons anyway. But that's a longer discussion.
Well,
Aliens or demons? We've had multiple guests on this program making that very argument, and I tend to agree. Now, we do have Senator Josh Hawley of Missouri giving some really important insight into the founding of America that it's worth remembering as we come up on our 250th birthday. Check this out.
I want to talk to you about the moment that we're in, the hour that we face, and what I believe the church's call is. And what we do as believers in Jesus Christ in this moment, as our nation faces serious dangers. I'm more convinced than ever, more convicted than ever, that we need godly men and women in leadership. We need godly men and women in every level of public life. But what this country needs above all is not new laws, though we do need those. It's not reform at every level, though we do need that. What we need above all is a revival where the nation will encounter the person of Jesus Christ. We see an addiction of anxiety. We see addictions of hopelessness. We see a surge in depression. We see a breakdown in the family. We see loss of life expectancy. It is a moment of great peril for our nation. And the church has been under siege. The loss of hope and family and future among our people.
Yep, America founded on the gospel of Jesus Christ. He's right, folks. Whether you like it or not, he is absolutely correct, and we ought to remember that if we hope to preserve our freedom. Now, Ron DeSantis, governor of Florida, hints at a possible 2028 run. Listen.
Will you run for president again?
We'll see. I mean, I think that, in 24, like in Iowa, the people that voted for Trump, if he wasn't running, I would have gotten like 90% of those people. They were conservative voters, right? They didn't want the non-conservative, that they wanted me. And so, but the timing didn't work out, obviously, for that. So you just got to see what happens.
We'll see what happens, folks. Meanwhile, Florida Republicans just suffered two massive election losses in special elections last week. One in a purple state Senate district that Ron DeSantis helped turn red. Another by Mar-a-Lago, House District 87, folks. Democrats flipped both of those seats. And it's largely because Republicans didn't show up, partly because nobody told them to show up, right? Where is the governor? Where is the lieutenant governor? I don't know. We mentioned last week that Republicans are on track to get crushed in the midterms if they're not careful. But there is a lot of phoniness to it as well, folks. You saw the No Kings protest over the weekend. Well, we've got the data now. This is not grassroots at all. It's AstroTurf. Arabella put $79 million into this. Warren Buffett put $16 million. Ford Foundation, $51 million. Rockefeller's $26 million. Soros, $72 million. Tides Foundation, you name it. They are all funding this, folks. And, even conservatives now are questioning Trump. At CPAC last week, they actually supported when they asked about his impeachment. Look at this.
How many of you would like to see impeachment hearings? No. That was the wrong answer. Let me try it again. How many of you would like to see impeachment hearings? No.
Yeah, wrong answer, folks. Well, we're out of time in the news segment. So much going on, but we'll get to it hopefully next week. But I want you to stay tuned, folks. We've got Congressman Andy Ogles coming up to talk about the immigration bill that totally reshaped the United States of America. He's got legislation introduced now to overturn that. We also have Representative Ben Davis joining us. He's got articles of impeachment against Governor Tim Walz, and then the great Jan Jekielek to talk about Chinese Orvis harvesting. So go to our website, libertysentinel.org. Check out our friends at Classical Conversations if you've got children or grandchildren that need a real God-centered education. And stay with us. We're going to be right back here on the Sentinel Report.
Introducing Perform Light. Perform Light helps support your body's performance from within. This plant-powered electrolyte drink helps you be the power plant that you were meant to be. Unlike most electrolyte products in the market, Perform Light is more than just a sodium, potassium, or magnesium-containing electrolyte formula. It is bioenergetic nutrition. Perform Light has a full spectrum of minerals derived from pure, natural seawater, so the balance of electrolytes in Perform Light is the same that exists in the body, making the nutrient load more bioavailable. In addition, Perform Light contains a blend of 31 powerhouse vegetable and fruit concentrates and herbal extracts rich in bioflavonoids and antioxidants to enhance energy and oxygen utilization naturally without stimulants or sugar. And of course, Perform Light is powered by VNI's proteasome technology for rapid and sustained absorption of its nutrient payload. Better absorbed minerals means more electrolytes to promote the essential electrical functions of cells in your body. Unlock the power of your mitochondria. Harness the energy of your cells. This is nutrition that gets in and energy that comes out. Feel the energy. Be the energy with Perform Light.
In 1965, Congress essentially declared war, according to our next guest, Congressman Andy Ogles of Tennessee, on the United States of America by passing the so-called Hart-Celler Immigration Act. This is the legislation that threw open wide the borders of the United States of America to the Third World. It's the reason why millions of immigrants from the Islamic world and from the pagan world have flooded American shores over the last few generations, especially over the last few years. And there's now, for the first time in living memory, a serious effort to turn the clock back. That is being led by Congressman Andy Ogles of Tennessee. He just filed legislation H.R. 7964 to amend the Immigration and Nationality Act to prohibit the admission of aliens from certain countries where the United States cannot reliably verify the identity or background of individuals seeking entry, building upon the framework established by Presidential Memorandum 9645 and upheld by the Supreme Court in Trump versus Hawaii, and for other purposes. So Congressman Andy Ogles, who's going to join us in just a moment, has been one of the top leaders in Congress on this issue. He has argued that Congress declared war on American culture, that through this massive change to American immigration law has sent foreign troops to every American community to steal jobs, erase our religion, infiltrate our schools. And so Congressman Ogles has determined that we have got to overturn that. Joining us now to discuss is Congressman Andy Ogles. Welcome, Congressman. Appreciate you coming on the program. I want to talk to you about the Hart-Celler Act. You have been making some very public comments about the possibility of repealing that, the desirability of repealing that. This, of course, is what threw the doors to America wide open to the Third World, to Islamic and pagan societies. And you've been very vocal on this. Talk to us about why you're concerned about this and what we might do to overturn it.
Yeah, I mean, when you look back historically, before 1965, immigration policy, we actually had a fairly strict quota system, and we controlled who came in and where they came from. 1965, you see the passage of Hart-Celler, which really set the framework and opened the floodgates to chain migration and the abuses. And then you fast forward to modern times. Now you see, so if let's say hypothetically a skilled worker or a doctor and his immediate family is going to come into the U.S., all of their family is eligible. So it's not just a family of 3 or 4 or 5, it's a family of 15, 20, 25. And so that's got to end. So the H-1B, the abuses, all of the things that we know that take place will be coming to an end with my bill, the Assimilation Act. And one of the things that we can look at with the passage of this is your character. Why are you here? Do you have the ability to, pay your way to get a job instead of 60 to 70% of illegals now on welfare? So think about that for a minute. You've got millions of people here illegally. You've got veteran suicide at roughly 20 a day. You have kids across the nation who don't have textbooks. And where's your taxpayer money going? It's going to illegals instead of taking care of Americans. And I have a problem with that. And so now we can look and say, look, you have an affiliation to MS-13 or Trinidad. No, you can't come in. You have a murder or rape conviction, which, by the way, Joe Biden was letting murderers and rapists and violent offenders into our nation. And what did they do when they got here? They murdered, they raped, and they committed assault. So you get this nugget who was caught in Wilson County just outside of Nashville, wanted for murder. You have this guy who raped a minor. Then you have this guy who raped a woman on the steps of a church. All of these in the Nashville area, and she later died. These are the types of people that are coming into this country, and we are working to get them all deported.
Congressman, we've got the midterms coming up, obviously, and historically midterms have gone against the president's party. So we may be down to the last few months here where this is a realistic possibility, at least for the foreseeable future. But that brings up a bigger question. Why do you think the Democrats have been so adamant about importing millions of people from the Third World, from the Islamic world, from the pagan world? Is it just about votes? Why do they feel the need to flood the United States with people from cultures that are fundamentally incompatible with Western Christian culture?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head. So when you look at conservative states like Tennessee, like Texas, like Florida, you see this population flight to our states from states like New York and California, New Jersey, et cetera. And so the Democrats literally are backfilling that population flight with illegals, because if we were to redo the census and do it accurately, Democrats could lose 20 to 30 seats, which means the House would always be Republican forevermore. And so the only way they can retain the House or gain the House is to cheat in elections and, of course, try to steal it by counting illegals.
Yeah, Tom Homan actually mentioned that on this program a couple of years ago. Here we are. So let's talk about this. I mean, if this were to be passed, is it possible, do you think, to reverse some of the damage, or is it too far gone for us to be able to get a handle on this completely?
Well, we really don't have a choice. I mean, you can look at London, you can look at Paris, you can look at Rome, you can look at some of the crime statistics from those cities where, and I'll speak generically, where the Muslim population is anywhere from 6 to 12%, depending on the respective city, but yet they're 50 to 60% of the crime. They're 40, 50% of the sexual assaults. That's coming to America if we don't wake up. So that's why I've been bold. That's why I've been outspoken. And oh, by the way, we've had 4 terrorist attacks. You had the shooting in Virginia, the shooting in Texas, the synagogue attack with the vehicle in Michigan, and the attempted bombing in New York. We have roughly 3,000 mosques in the United States of America, and not a single mosque has condemned the violence. Not a single mosque has disavowed the attackers. So they want to claim they're the religion of peace. Meanwhile, their silence is condoning the very violent nature that they say that they don't believe in.
Yeah, and that raises a big question. I mean, we now have Islamic schools popping up all over the country. We're now in the 2nd or 3rd generation. How does America deal with this? I mean, do you think some of this population will eventually assimilate into the United States and become good Americans? I know you've talked about deportations. Where do we draw the line? Who should be deported? Who should not be? How do we deal with that?
Well, again, one of the reasons why that I'm working on really overhauling the immigration bill, or framework, is so I've got a series of bills we'll continue to roll out. I've got another one that'll be out in the next week or 2, is to do what you just say, is to look at who's here, how did they get here, if they've committed a crime, should they be denaturalized, setting up a clear framework for that, and then deport them. And so the answer to your question is deport, 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 but also, quite frankly, again, this is the United States. We get to decide who comes in. We get to decide who leaves. And so decide who we want here. And if you and I were to go to the UAE or some other country, we might be able to get a work visa. We'd have to pay their taxes. We could never vote. We could never become a citizen. And if we commit a crime, they're going to kick us out. I mean, that's common sense approach to immigration that most of the rest of the world has. In America, it's been abused, it's been used, it's been fornicated, quite frankly, and I'm going to be the one that fixes it.
Yeah. Speaking of current deportations, I mean, we know that Democrats are throwing a fit. We know they want to shut down Department of Homeland Security until ICE gets its wings clipped. Where do you think we're at in kind of getting rid of some of the millions of illegals that came in under Biden? Is it happening fast enough? And is this sustainable? Like, if the Republicans were to lose the House, say hypothetically at the midterm, Trump's got 2 more years in office, are things being put into place to make sure that we don't just get a total reversal of this if, say, another Joe Biden or Kamala Harris were to come into the White House?
And obviously we have the midterms, so really I think the House is where the battle is going to be. But I'm optimistic. I think that we're going to see a calming of the conflict in Iran. I literally was just meeting with members of the Russian Duma to look at, is there a pathway to normalizing relations with Russia, which again stabilizes oil markets, which impacts the U.S. economy, because everything that we purchase, everything in your studio, everything related to your car, everything around me somehow is touched by oil, gas, diesel. And so focusing on that, and again, we have to lead through strength, which is what President Trump has been doing, whether you're looking at Venezuela, whether you look at Iran, and quite frankly, when you look at his successful foreign policy. So I'm optimistic. about the midterms. Again, as someone who's on financial services, we want to see interest rates continue to come down. We'll have a new Fed chair in May, so I would expect or predict that you'll have several quarter point rate hikes or rate reductions over the summer.
Yeah, and do you think some of these Trump administration policies on immigration, on, say, climate change, which of course he's been very, very strong on, is Congress going to enshrine some of this into federal law so that it cannot be reversed with a future executive order?
Well, the House has been doing a lot of that. The real logjam is in the Senate. But again, President Trump is going to go down as one of the most historic presidents in the United States because he's literally doing the things that he campaigned on, the promises he made. He's making America safe again. He's making America healthy again. And quite frankly, he's made America great again.
Very good. And over the long term, Congressman, are you optimistic that America can be put back on the right path? I mean, we've got obviously the midterm, the next presidential election coming up, but long term sustainability, we've got the debt crisis, the financial issues, massive federal debt, unfunded liabilities. Is there a path forward for America that puts us back on a solid foundation? And where does Congress fit into that over the long term?
And we're the legislative body, so the answer to that question is absolutely. That's why we need to win the midterms and why we'll win the White House in this next election is that so we can continue to implement this vision and save the country. Because if we don't, what's at stake is the future of our children.
Thank you so much. Congressman, if people want to support your bill, how do they get in touch with their congressman, and how do they tell them to get involved with this bill to repeal the Hart-Celler Act?
Obviously, you can go to Rep. Ogles or go to Andy Ogles. We're pretty easy to track down.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Congressman. Couldn't agree more. We've got to stay active in the political process because if the election goes the wrong way, it could mean catastrophic things for our country. Really appreciate you coming on the show. Thank you very much. And you, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for tuning in. If you're interested in finding out more about this legislation or even calling your own member of Congress, letting them know what you think, it's H.R. 7964. And this is Congressman Ogles' effort to overturn the 1965 Hart-Celler Immigration Act that basically threw the borders of America wide open to the third world. That, again, is H.R. 7964. You can call your own member of Congress and let them know how you feel.
Your children are your legacy. Treat them as such. When you homeschool with Classical Conversations, they connect you with a local community of like-minded families who not only learn together, but do life together. They equip homeschool parents just like you, or grandparents, with the confidence to raise bright, observant students who have a lifelong love of learning. Please visit classicalconversations.com/LSM to learn more.
Welcome back to the Sentinel Report, everybody. As promised, we have Representative Ben Davis. He is a state representative in Minnesota, and he's also a pastor, which I love that. Pastors getting involved in the public realm. Hey, God's word speaks about politics too, believe it or not, and we'll get into that today. But the reason I wanted to bring Ben on, I did some events in Minnesota last week, and I heard him speak. He was just such a breath of fresh air in terms of his biblical understanding of the role of Christians, the role of the church, the role of pastors, and the role of government. It was just awesome to hear. But what he is doing right now is deeply involved in the news cycle as well. You all have heard about Governor Tim Walz up in Minnesota. You've all heard about Attorney General Keith Ellison, the radical Muslim socialist who never met a criminal he wanted to prosecute and never met a good guy he didn't want to prosecute. But Ben Davis, Representative Ben Davis, has filed articles of impeachment. So I wanted to get him on today to discuss all this and more. Representative Davis, thank you very much for joining us today. Talk to us about your articles of impeachment against the two top officials in your state.
Yeah, well, first of all, thanks a lot, Alex, for having me on the Sentinel Report. I really appreciate it. Love what you do. First time I heard you speak was last week, and I was blown away by your presentation. So thank you so much for what you're doing and what you're exposing and the action items that you're bringing to people. It's much appreciated. We need Christians to do more of what you're doing, getting involved. Yeah, Minnesota. I'm kind of getting tired of talking about fraud because Minnesota has kind of become the threshing floor here for fraud. But we do have to talk about it. We have a lot of immorality going on in our state right now with our government, and one of those things that's going on is massive fraud. As you know, you've heard there's at least $9 billion worth of Medicaid fraud going on since 2018 in Minnesota, and of course, President Trump has mentioned as much as 18 to 19 billion dollars worth of fraud. So 9 to 18, in that ballpark somewhere. That's Medicaid fraud. And then, of course, we've got the federal child nutrition program. We've had $500 million of fraud going on there. I'm sure you've heard of Feeding Our Future scandal. And then also the child care assistance program. We call that the CCAP program. That's had about $200 million worth of fraud. And for me, that's actually the biggest deal, because that's a lot of that is strictly coming out of the Minnesota taxpayers' pocket. And so we're trying to put a stop to this. And I brought articles of impeachment against Governor Walz and Attorney General Keith Ellison. And I'm sure you heard this last week. Congressman Anna Paulina Luna, she actually referred both of these men to the Attorney General's office, Pam Bondi, because she says that she's seen enough evidence that these men need to be investigated and potentially prosecuted. And would you like me just to keep talking about that right now, going to Ellison a little bit, maybe?
Yeah, well, I'm really grateful that you brought that up, because what we're talking about here is not just impeachable offenses, although there's certainly that, but we're talking about here what looks to be widespread criminal activity. But talk a little bit about the articles of impeachment, if you would, Pastor. What are the arguments being made for why these two men need to be removed from public office in the state of Minnesota?
Well, with Governor Walz, at the very least, he's complicit in allowing the fraud to happen. So I won't spend much time on that. And of course, Representative Mike Weiner, he's kind of my partner in crime in the legislature. He's actually the chief author of those articles. I signed on to him next. We've been working both hand in hand, though, on both. But Governor Walz is complicit. He knew that this fraud was going on. My first year in the legislature was 2023, and we've been blowing the whistle on the child care assistance program fraud ever since I got there. And I was told by other legislators, they've been blowing the whistle on it ever since Walz got in office. And what we saw was the Democrats passing legislation that just enabled it more. And it was actually the governor's recommendations enabling it even more. And they knew it was going on, and they didn't just not stop it. They actually enabled legislation for it to continue. And of course, all the administrations where all this fraud is happening, it falls on Governor Walz. He's in charge. He hasn't fired anybody for any of this fraud. And so, he's announced that he's not running for re-election. It's not right, Alex, for him to just ride off into the sunset as if he was this great two-term governor and not be held accountable. And the Constitution affords me the ability to try and hold him accountable. So that's Governor Walz. Attorney General Keith Ellison, I unfortunately, we only have a few minutes to talk about this. I could talk about him for hours. But back in 2021, he had the Feeding Our Future fraudsters right in his office, pledging campaign donations to him in order to get the administration that was looking into these guys, to get the administration off of their back. That's what they were telling him to do. And he said he would comply with getting the departments off their back. And he did. We do know that he did receive like $10,000 in campaign donations. And not only that, he has a son that was running for city council. They pledged donations to him as well. So he took the money. And then just a few weeks back with Senator Josh Hawley, I'm sure you saw this, he had the nerve to lie before Congress about taking any of that money. He blatantly lied. That's contempt of Congress. So I'd like to see him impeached for that as well.
Yeah. Oh, man. It's so horrific what the American people and what the people in Minnesota have been subjected to and what they have tolerated for so long. This is lawlessness. It's criminality. It's absolutely out of control. So I'm really grateful for you, Representative, for trying to have some accountability here. Now, one of the things that you talked about at the event we had in Brainerd, actually at the church you preach at, was the Christian biblical understanding of government. And we American Christians have been bombarded with this messaging for so long. Oh, we don't get involved in politics. Oh, we just stay silent on all these issues. But not you. You had just some marvelous insights into this. You talked about Romans 13, the purpose of government, the role of Christians in the public realm. Give us your thoughts on this. I mean, you're a pastor and you're also in public office, and you have a lot of American Christians who say you can't do that. You're mixing church and state, whatever. Talk to us about why you think it's important for Christians to be involved in the public realm.
Yeah, Alex, the idea that Christians should not be involved in politics is a lie from the pit of hell. Jesus said, go into all the world and preach the gospel. And that would definitely include into the realm of government and politics. Politics is just public policy. Here in America, I want Christians trying to shape and form what our public policy is. And the reason why we see such perversion in our public policy today in America is because Satan convinced Christians to back out of politics, because I don't know if we were going to shove lost souls into hell number 2. There's only one hell. And I think we can walk and chew gum at the same time. We can preach Jesus and preach righteousness and morality at the same time. That's exactly what Jesus did. And he constantly took on the politicians of his day, the Sadducees and the Pharisees. Those guys were the politicians of Jesus's day. And you see him fighting them the whole way. Yet he still died on the cross for them. So he spoke the truth to them, and he spoke the truth in love to them. And we can do the same. The Apostle Paul, another great example, he spoke truth to power. He went before kings and magistrates. And he even let them know when they were doing wrong. John the Baptist did the same thing. But Paul was preaching, hopefully I can get this in a couple minutes here. Paul was preaching at the Areopagus in Acts chapter 17. And he said this, God who made the world and everything in it, since he is Lord of heaven and earth, he does not dwell in temples made with hands, nor is he worshipped with men's hands, as though he needed anything, since he gives to all life, breath, and all things. And he has made, here we go, from one blood, every nation. Aren't you glad that God is not racist?
Amen.
He has made from one blood every nation of men to dwell on the face of the earth. And listen to this. And God has determined their pre-appointed times and the boundaries of their dwellings. Don't tell me boundaries aren't important. Borders are very important. And God, so I read that and it hit me like a ton of bricks one day. God is the one who determined the nation of America. He determined its boundaries and the time frame in which it would exist. And Alex, I don't think it's time for America to be done yet. I really don't. And then, so fast forward, so knowing that America is God's idea, not the founding fathers' idea. It was just God putting it on their heart. Romans 13, you go into that. The true teaching of Romans 13 says, let every soul be subject to the governing authority. For there is no authority except from God, and the authorities that exist are there because of God. And I don't even need to read on from there. Right there, it says that God is the one who sets up authority in our nation. Who is the authority in our nation? Well, from the original understanding of our Declaration of Independence and our Constitution, it's we the people. We the people are the ones with whom all the inherent power of government has been given, and it's clearly given to us by Almighty God. And this is a stewardship that we the people have been given. And we the people includes Christians first and foremost. Our founding fathers, many of them were God-fearing believers in Jesus Christ. And it's time for the church to stop retreating from what God has set up in this nation and to take this stewardship of we the people seriously. We're going to be held accountable at the judgment seat of Christ for this stewardship of America that we've been given.
Amen, Representative. Preach it. I couldn't have said it better myself, folks. We are going to be held accountable, right? God put us in a country where we have self-government, where we ultimately are the sovereigns. Read your Constitution. And what are you going to say on Judgment Day when God says, hey, what'd you do about all the babies that were being murdered or all the crime that was hurting innocent women and children? And we better have a good answer. I know Representative Davis has a good answer. Do you, ladies and gentlemen? Representative Ben Davis, pastor extraordinaire. I think we're going to be seeing a lot more of you in this nation. I'm grateful that God has lifted you and people like you up to speak these truths. We need it more than ever in this country. But I want to thank you for coming on. I want to thank you for what you're doing in Minnesota. Thank you for what you're doing for God's people in Minnesota. And I hope we can talk to you again very soon.
Thank you, Alex. God bless you.
God bless you too. All right, folks, stay with us. We're going to be right back from this break with Jan Jekielek talking about one of the most monstrous crimes that you could possibly imagine being perpetrated right now by the mass murdering dictatorship in communist China. We'll be right back.
In 1776, a nation was born, forged in the crucible of revolution. Brave men and women stood together fighting for freedom, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Throughout history, the spirit of patriotism has prevailed. The battles may have changed, but the values remain the same. Today, in 2024, we find ourselves at a pivotal moment where the call for unity, freedom, and a better future echoes louder than ever. Introducing Patriot Mobile, the wireless carrier that stands with you. We are committed to supporting the values that make our nation great. With affordable plans and reliable nationwide coverage, Patriot Mobile is not just a wireless service. It's a call to action for those who believe in the American dream. Because this year is not just any year, it's the most important year since our nation's founding. Choose a wireless carrier that shares your values. Choose Patriot Mobile. For free activation, use promo code Newman.
Welcome back to the Sentinel Report. Folks, we have talked for a long time on this program, and I've been talking for 15 years now about the unbelievably barbaric practice of the Chinese Communist Party of chopping organs out of political prisoners, religious prisoners. It is one of the most monstrous crimes that I can actually think of, which is hard to imagine. Just recently, we had an excellent guest on here, Dr. Trey, the head of Doctors Against Forced Organ Harvesting, to kind of expound on that a little bit. Today, we are very honored to have with us the great Jan Jekielek. He is a senior editor at the Epoch Times, where I serve as a contributor. And he's got an incredible new book. He's also the host, I should say, of American Thought Leaders, just an absolutely wonderful program. He's interviewed over 1,000 thought leaders, including little old me. And he's got this new book. When I found out about it, I said, we have to get Jan on the program. It's called Killed to Order, The Organ Harvesting Industry of China and the True Nature of America's Biggest Adversary. Folks, this is explosive. It needs to be read by everyone. Jan, welcome to the program. Thank you very much for joining us.
Alex, I'm thrilled to be here. Tables are turned, my friend.
It's so wonderful to have you here, Jan. Thank you. And I'm just grateful for the work that you are doing. But this is one of those issues that when I first learned about this, I think 15 years ago, I even remember like struggling to go to sleep after hearing about what they were doing. But there are a lot of people out there who don't even realize this is happening. So let's just start with the basic question. What is this issue of forced organ harvesting in communist China?
Well, it takes a bit of a setup because this is not your run-of-the-mill black market organ trafficking situation, which itself is really horrible, by the way, right? You need a few things that are unique to communist China, okay, or almost unique to communist China. You need to have a state actor, basically, and that's the Chinese Communist Party. You need to also be able to have the ability to push mass propaganda through a population, and you have to be able to the ability to incarcerate a massive group of people. And communist China has all of that, as your viewers well know, I think, control the whole sort of media / propaganda apparatuses, lit absolutely everything, can censor anything they don't like on one side. And on the other hand, they can incarcerate massive state security apparatus, bigger than even their military, okay, that they use against people they don't like. So that's the setup, okay? So in an ethical transplant situation, and this is important to understand, someone needs to have a catastrophic accident, okay? Typically motorcycle or car accident. And that also they need to, in order for an organ to be able to fit into your body, right, to actually work and not get rejected, our bodies reject things that are foreign. They try to match blood and tissue type. So the combination of the catastrophic accident of someone that also matches your blood and tissue type is rare. And that's why we wait for months or years in some cases before we can get a transplant that's going to work on us, not to mention the wait list sometimes, right? So that, anyway, in China, one of the whistleblowers back in the year 2006, he was a transplant surgeon himself, and he had a patient who basically said, I'm tired of waiting. I'm going to go to China, and I'm going to get it in 2 weeks, scheduled. Okay, so now this was a massive red flag for us, okay, because number one, well, you know when that catastrophic accident is going to happen 2 weeks down the line. There's only one way you can know that, is that you're making it happen, right? That's one. And the second part was 2 weeks. How can you possibly get all these matches to happen within a 2 week time span? So now, again, your viewers will probably be familiar with the fact that in communist China, there's always at least one or many what so-called black classes that the regime propagandizes against, dehumanizes, and basically everyone else doesn't want to be one of that group. Landowners very early on in communism because they wanted to seize their land. In 89, it was students, right, the student movement. And in 99, it became Falun Gong practitioners, okay? And Falun Gong practitioners, super briefly, people practicing truthfulness, compassion, and tolerance, a very grassroots movement, no kind of money collection, no hierarchy even, no worship, but deeply spiritual and a lot of deep conviction. And so when the dictator at the time in 1999, Jiang Zemin, decided to, quote, eradicate this group, to use his words, there were 70 to 100 million people doing this, that had kind of grown by word of mouth very, very rapidly. He put them basically into this black class creation program, if you will, okay? The re-education system, right? They wanted to break these people, right? It was acceptable to break these people. It was acceptable because they're a black class to basically transform them. That's another term that was used. And basically make them good, compliant communists, so to speak. These people weren't even political. They had nothing against the Communist Party, but the one thing they wouldn't do is give up their faith. And this is what created all the circumstances for kill to order. Because on the one hand, they incarcerated, say, 1 million, maybe even 2 people. Okay, we don't know how many exactly. It's a state secret. And number 2, these people were dehumanized, activating that quirk in our psychology that basically makes it so that it's easier for us to accept treating people in horrific ways, i.e. something like forced organ harvesting. And so in this unique situation, right, one, you have 1 million or more people incarcerated, and now you can blood type and tissue type them ahead of time. Okay, so people are just being blood type and tissue typed routinely that are Falun Gong practitioners in this massive system of incarceration. And that's how you can get killed to order, because if you say pay that 100 or 200 grand for a heart, okay, and that transaction goes through, your so-called donor, the prisoner of conscience incarcerated, is already pre-matched to you because there's so many of them. There's a match already, and that person can be shipped and killed to order. Okay. Wow. And this is the system, right? This is this monstrous thing that's so hard to fathom, right? At the beginning, I remember my mind sort of wandering, right? I didn't want to go there as this was first explained to me how this works, and I saw the evidence for myself.
Yeah, it's so monstrous. As you're talking, Jan, I'm thinking like, you go to the grocery store and you pick out a lobster for dinner, and yet here we're talking about human beings, like mothers and fathers and daughters and sisters and brothers. It's enough to give you goosebumps. It's horrific. Jan, one of the most important things that I think you do in your book, in addition to kind of going through all the decades of research and investigations into this, because it's not that nobody knew about this, it's that the media wouldn't talk about it, the regime wouldn't let governments talk about it, but you talk in the book about what this means for the United States. Like, it's really time to rethink our approach to how we deal with the CCP. We've only got like 3 minutes left in this segment. Jan, tell us, how do you think we need to reorient and rethink our policy toward this mass murdering regime?
Absolutely. So in Kill to Order, I have, since we only have 3 minutes, but I'll tell you the sort of the boundaries of it, if you will. But killtoorder.com, that's where you can actually get the book. That's the short link to the Amazon page. I have an appendix that answers this question in intricate detail, and actually both the relevance, right? I talk about extensively in the book the relevance to Americans. We are actually complicit in this crime in the sense that we train those transplant surgeons. Okay, not all of them, some of them. We provide transplantation materials and technologies. We provide funding. We have research partnerships. We have hospital partnerships. At the very least, okay, we don't need to participate and kind of fuel this, right? Never mind the other side of it, which is that, you know, our mentality around medicine has actually been shifted. This kill to order thing, it's the extreme version of utilitarianism, right? Treating human beings as objects, the polar opposite of Hippocratic medicine, okay? And we see ourselves drifting that way, right? And this is, I argue that about that extensively. Like, this is, we thought we were going to change them. We were going to liberalize them through pumping all that cash, and actually happened in the other direction, right? And we have to stop that direction as well, because that's a very dark future for us. So, you know, you think that something's far away and it doesn't affect you. Actually, it does affect you. And in terms of like what to actually do about it, that's what this appendix in here does. There's legislation at the state, federal, you know, even at the municipal level. There's Rotary clubs that have gotten in the game. There's a satellite Rotary club where people can get sort of dedicated to ending forced organ harvesting in China. People can kind of join that Rotary in America. That's relatively easy, and kind of learn how to participate with other people that have become kind of activists around this. There's already a structure for that. So at any level of whether it's, you know, grassroots, state, federal, whatever, there's things that can be done.
Yeah, I'm so grateful for your work on this, Jan. People need to know this. It's not something that we can just pretend isn't happening. And our Congress has passed some resolutions, but we need more than that. These are human beings. This flies in the face of everything we know about human beings having dignity, being made in the image of God. It's an atrocity. It's happening right now. So, folks, go get a copy of this book. It's called Killed to Order: The Organ Harvesting Industry of China and the True Nature of America's Biggest Adversary. Jan, thank you very much for joining us today. Really appreciate it. And thanks for all the work that you do.
Alex, it's such a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. All right, folks. Again, go get a copy of that book. It's called Killed to Order. You can get it on Amazon or anywhere good books are sold. And I want to thank you for tuning in. This is the Sentinel Report. We're so grateful for you. Get over to libertysentinel.org. You can sign up for our newsletter and get all the rest of our stuff. And thank you once again for tuning in today. Until next time, we appreciate you more than you know. God bless you all.